What's happening, y'all? Welcome inside the Fantasy Stock Exchange. Danny and Bush coming at you with the second half of our quarterback landing spot predictions, free agency preview, NFL draft preview, whatever you want to call it. We're basically spinning the quarterback carousel and going through and talking about what each team that we deem to be quarterback needy or have quarterback questions, what they're going to do at the quarterback position. Before we get into this, if you guys enjoy this at any point, or if you just want to support the channel, I encourage you to pause the video right now. Hit the like button, helps us out tremendously. Comment any of your thoughts, any predictions. Call us jackasses, whatever you want to do in the comment section. All helps us out the same. Subscribe to the channel if you're new and hit the bell icon so you're notified anytime we post any videos. Also, before I get into how Danny's doing, I encourage you guys to join the Discord. We're going to get very active in there very, very soon. We're going to have every Friday, we're going to be doing fan engagement stuff with you guys, taking your questions about your dynasty leagues, doing mock drafts, all that kind of stuff. So if you're not already in the Discord, go ahead and do so. Me and Danny have notifications turned on for it, so you can get a hold of us anytime you need. It's a great community in there, and there's a lot of informed fantasy players if you're maybe new to fantasy. Anyway, Danny, how you doing?
Doing well. And as Corey mentioned, Discord as well, we're going to be answering a lot of your guys' questions, giving you input as possible. And as you see on the screen, our Twitter @, feel free whenever you want, message us, hit a follow, whatever you want to do. We're very active and engaging on there. So again, just whatever platform you feel you need to reach us in, we'll be there and be able to support you. But yeah, heck, talking about the comment section, you want to tell me about how much of a fucking Guido I'm looking like today? You can drop that in the comments too. Whatever it is that you want to support that YouTube algorithm, hit that SEO. It helps.
Hit the intro too. All right, so as I mentioned, I'm going to briefly explain this. If you guys did not see the AFC edition, me and Lucas went through that on Monday. Lucas will be joining me every Monday, and we're going to do this for every position if I forgot to mention that. Basically, what we did was we took the quarterback carousel, whether it's through free agency, the draft, or trade, and you're going to see that on the screen right now. These were the quarterbacks that are no longer available for us to do in the NFC edition of this series, of this two-part series. So the quarterbacks on the screen right now are the quarterbacks we deem to be available. Some of them are not available because we use them for the AFC. That is why they're crossed out. Anyway, the NFC. We're getting into the NFC quarterback situations, and we're going to start with the NFC North. In the NFC North, we deem that there are two teams that have a quarterback question mark. The Green Bay Packers and the Minnesota Vikings are not those two teams. Both of those guys have, in the Packers case, they have an MVP caliber quarterback and a plan for the future, so they're more than okay. And then in the Minnesota Vikings case, they have a lot of money and a lot of situations kind of wrapped up with Kirk Cousins, so they're not going to be in the quarterback market this year. But the Chicago Bears are the next quarterback or the first quarterback needy team on the list for us. And currently, we have Nick Foles as the only quarterback under contract on the roster. Mitch Trubisky is actually a free agent because they declined his fifth-year option. And for Nick Foles, he has a $14 million dead cap hit if they were to choose to move on from him, but they would only save $6 million. So it's slightly beneficial for them to move on from him, but honestly, they're almost better restructuring his contract or just cutting him altogether. This is an interesting situation. I'm not really sure what they're going to do with Nick Foles. What do you think of the two current starters that they have already in place? We'll get into their options in a second.
Again, you don't have if you have two quarterbacks, you most typically don't have one, if that makes sense. Yeah. Basically what that means in the NFL is if you don't have one conclusive signal caller that you can trust going into the following year, you typically don't have that position set. And as you mentioned with the Chicago Bears, they are in a weird predicament because if Mitch Trubisky, his option was picked up, he would be the starter going forward. However, as you said, he's not signed. They declined that fifth-year option. He's going to be hitting free agency. We're actually going to be mentioning him later on in the video. Now, what are you left with? You're left with a team that doesn't necessarily have the draft capital to make a move for one of those top four quarterbacks. Again, they're picking 20th overall, which is simply not going to cut it if you want one of, again, Trevor Lawrence, Trey Lance, Justin Fields, or Zach Wilson. So they're weird. Like, do you take a Mac Jones at 20? I don't necessarily think they do because, quite frankly, you don't take
it doesn't really move the needle enough for me.
Exactly. you don't take quarterbacks without elite traits in the top 20. And as good and efficient as Mac Jones was this year, actually liked him quite a bit. I had a late second round grade on him. He's not a quarterback I'm absolutely willing to touch in the first round if you're a team like Chicago. So do you ride it again with the Nick Foles? Do you sign a bridge quarterback? They're really in a weird spot this offseason because they don't have their answer on the roster and they don't necessarily have the capital to be able to acquire their answer.
Yeah, I agree. And in terms of cap space, they currently have negative $9 million in cap space. Yeah. So they're over the cap currently, pun intended. They can create a bit of cap space by cutting a few veterans like Jimmy Graham and Danny Trevathan and potentially Bobby Massey. But basically what I said with Nick Foles, like Nick Foles' contract is not one that is going to be overly beneficial for you to cut him. So I honestly, like, if you're going to draft a quarterback or if you're going to bring in an additional competition, maybe you bring back Mitch Trubisky for another year. If you can afford to do that, you move some money around. I think it's honestly just beneficial to keep Nick Foles on your roster unless he's just some kind of locker room cancer, which I don't think Nick Foles is. So I would advise that they just keep Nick Foles. I don't think it's too beneficial for them to get rid of him. But the free agents this year, they have negative $9 million in cap. And Allen Robinson's a free agent. Allen Robinson is the best player on their offense. He's probably one of the top 3 players on their team in general.
Easily. And, I mean, aside from Khalil Mack, who are you taking over him?
I mean, like, I guess you could probably argue Eddie Jackson, Kyle Fuller, maybe, but I guess probably Allen Robinson.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is, again, as you mentioned, a top 3 or so player on their team who, quite frankly, has voiced his concerns over the past 2 years. He's not coming back. They don't have the cap space to bring him back, and he doesn't want to come back. So, quite frankly, you're going to have a huge hole on offense.
Theoretically, they could move some money around and franchise tag him. I think that's the only way he comes back to Chicago. I don't think there's any chance he signs a long-term extension with Chicago. I don't think he wants to be there. And basically, the point of this, we're going to get into wide receivers later on in the coming weeks, but the point of this from the quarterback perspective is Allen Robinson not being there makes whoever lands there as a quarterback a lot less fantasy relevant is basically the point.
Yes.
Because Allen Robinson is a top 10 receiver on a talent basis and for fantasy purposes in the NFL. So not having a number 1 target like that, as much as we like Darnell Mooney and some of the other pieces they have, it's not an ideal situation for a QB to land in, whether it be a trade, free agency, or through the draft.
Their best option is to have their 2021 season crash and burn in front of them. Yes, if you're a Bears fan, you're happy they made the playoffs. You know what? Okay, we went 8-8 this year. We had a hard-fought loss to the Saints in the first round. I get that. You want to see your team make the playoffs. But given the state of this franchise, it would have been so much more beneficial for them to be in that 10 to 13 pick range. Because, again, similar to San Francisco was coming off a Super Bowl appearance, got the 12th pick this year, and they're primed to make a move potentially. Again, like you'll see what ends up unfolding for them. But the Bears just don't have that flexibility. They don't have nearly the draft capital. They don't have the cap space. They're really in that no man's land that you don't want to be in as an NFL franchise.
They're like the diameter between a playoff team and a rebuilding team. They're like the scale of the whether you need to rebuild or not. Because Matt Nagy's made the playoffs 2 of the 3 years he's been the coach there. As much as he had a bad 2019 season, he's been a pretty solid coach. And I mean, Mitch Trubisky is probably priced out. As I mentioned, they're negative $9 million in cap space. SpotTrack currently projects Mitch Trubisky to command $8.3 million on the open market, whether that be as a competition for someone like Drew Lock in Denver or something like that, or as a starting quarterback. I'm not sure anyone's going to sign him to be a starter, but a high-end backup quarterback competition contract is exactly what I expect out of or a bridge quarterback is exactly what I expect out of Mitch Trubisky. Basically, all this being said, the fantasy advice that you can take out of this is that the sell window for Bears players is on. Before any of this goes down, I would sell David Montgomery. David Montgomery, to me, is a sell candidate. 1, because how much of his talent was actually real because he played such an easy schedule the second half of the season. And 2, there's going to be quarterback turmoil, whether it's a rookie quarterback starting, whether it's Nick Foles, who isn't very good starting, whether it's, I don't know, a guy that they trade for and it's a new system and all that kind of stuff. I just think David Montgomery is at peak value right now. So that is the guy I'm taking away from what we're talking about right now is get rid of David Montgomery if you own him. Because I think you can get probably a rookie first-round pick and a piece for him.
And you could probably get, like, if we're doing the math right now, like 108 and maybe like a third.
108 maybe, or you get like a late first, like a 110 and like another running back piece maybe. I don't know, maybe you get like Mostert in a 110 or something like that.
Yeah, something. And to be quite honest, 110 might even I might even take the 110 straight up over Montgomery, given the situation at hand. Like,
I don't know
don't
if
get me
I'd
wrong.
go that far, but it would be. I'd consider it, especially if I was a rebuilding team.
Again, like I don't think he's a bad running back. I think he's a fine talent. But again, as you mentioned, that schedule at the end of the season was perfect. There's so much turmoil happening, not only at the quarterback position, but on offense as well. You don't have a true starting offensive line that you can really trust going into next year. You have, 2-3 pieces that you can trust as building blocks on that team. And quite frankly, receiving core, you're losing one of the top 12 receivers minimum in the league and relying on Darnell Mooney and Anthony Miller to carry the load. Like, this offense is not going to be scoring a ton of points. And as we've said multiple times, if you're a running back in fantasy football, I want you to either catch a brick load like Alvin Kamara number type of passes, or be able to score 12 to 15 touchdowns a year. And I just simply don't see either in David Montgomery's projection for next year.
And to be honest, like, as much as he improved from a talent perspective, it's not like he's some world beater talent that's going to overcome a bad offense. Like, I think he's very much a victim of circumstance. If he's in a bad offense, he's going to be bad for fantasy purposes. So we laid out all the options. Basically, the options that the Bears have are that they keep Nick Foles and suck this year, and maybe get their quarterback in next year's free agency or next year's draft. They could force pick at 20 overall Mac Jones or someone like that. They could explore a trade for a veteran quarterback, as we mentioned before, but I don't think that's likely either because of Nick Foles' contract. Yeah. I suppose you could cut Nick Foles and then try and go out and trade for a Carson Wentz or trade for a Matthew Stafford or something like that. But that seems like a lot of a headache to me as well. I think the best, and our verdict for the situation, the best thing to do is next to nothing, basically. Basically, all you need to do is provide a contingency to Nick Foles, which could be a low-end free agent like a Nick Mullins quarterback or something like that, or Jacoby Brissett, who is actually the decision that we've come to. The quarterback I pair with Nick Foles, who I expect to be under contract by this team based on the financials that we have available. You sign Jacoby Brissett to a 1-year, $5 million deal, and you look for your franchise signal caller next year. Smart teams, and I'm not sure the Bears are one of them based on their recent draft picks and all that kind of stuff. Smart teams do not force a quarterback to a situation where they're not going to succeed. I don't think a young quarterback succeeds in this situation without Allen Robinson. Not only that, yeah, exactly.
Maybe five total
quarterback succeeds in this situation without Allen Robinson.
Maybe 5-6 total quarterbacks in the league could probably succeed with this offense as current.
Yeah, unless you're going to break the bank and trade 3-1s for Deshaun Watson, it's probably not going to be well advised to go trade for a veteran quarterback. And again, probably don't want to force pick a rookie as well. So that's what we think of the Bears quarterback situation. Again, they're in a really weird situation. There's not a whole lot of wiggle room for them because of their cap situation, because of the contracts that they have, because of their draft capital. So if I'm a Bears fan, if I'm a Bears dynasty owner or someone I'm potentially looking to trade for Bears players, I would hold off because I think their value is going to be lower next year or midway through next season.
Yep, for sure. Going into the next team, actually in their division, and I'm actually going to be talking about the Detroit Lions. And currently, according to SpotRack, Matt Stafford has a potential out this year. $19 million, 2021. $19 million would be his dead cap. And it would actually free them up a little bit of money here. Now, they're in a position where they have a little bit of money, $3.5 million or so, to actually work with. Now, they don't have enough to re-sign those two receivers. That's going to be the main problem for them. They're going to lose Marvin Jones. They're going to lose Kenny Golladay. And
I don't know if they're going to lose Kenny Golladay necessarily. They could
potentially a franchise tag.
They're in the same situation that the Bears are in. They could franchise tag Golladay. Does Golladay want to be there? Who the hell knows? But you could have a disgruntled receiver who's not showing up to camp on a franchise tag. And we've seen that situation play out many times before. And you usually end up getting a lot less in a trade than you would have if you just let him go for a compensatory pick.
For sure. Regardless, the financial situation of Stafford's contract is pretty interesting to say the least. Because again, I mentioned that about $19 million cap hit if they were to get rid of him this year. That actually rises substantially if they kept him past this year. That would actually rise to the $33 million mark. And now you're talking about a quarterback. Was he 32, 33 years old, coming off some back issues? This isn't necessarily a team ready to contend. I think their best option, again, holding the 7th overall pick in the 2020 NFL draft, is getting their next guy, getting their next signal caller. Again, you just hired Dan Campbell as your new head coach. You have ample draft capital to be able to go on to the successor. And I think that's what they do here. So I currently actually have here that they take this opportunity with low cap, with really low commitment for the future, and just complete the rebuild. I mean, Stafford, day 2 pick to Washington would make a ton of sense. If they were able to get even, we'll say 51st overall from the Washington football team, I think makes good sense for both sides.
I think the Lions sell him for a third.
We'll just say hypothetically it's 51st overall. That'll actually little preview tie into the next one. But if you're the Lions here, I mean, you have a chance to draft one of the top 4 quarterbacks potentially in this upcoming draft. 7th overall should get you a Trey Lance. If that's the case, giving Dan Campbell that young, talented quarterback to build around in Trey Lance, who doesn't necessarily need to come in right away. You're rebuilding. You can sign a bridge quarterback to pair with him, maybe say an Andy Dalton.
Yeah, let Andy Dalton take the beating behind. I mean, their offensive line's good, but let him take the beating with no weapons and being on a bad team. Don't let Trey Lance be the one that takes that beating and absorbs that kind of mentality and loses his confidence. Just like Trey Lance was basically a 1-year starter, right? At NDSU. So you might as well just let Trey Lance sit behind, or it doesn't have to be Trey Lance. So it could be Zach Wilson, Justin Fields, whoever's there, basically. Yeah. And basically, what you want to do if you're the Lions, you're not going to get fired. Dan Campbell's not going to get fired. Your general manager's not going to get fired. This is your first year of a rebuild, so you can eat a bad year. You could have a top 5 pick again next year to add a receiver in the draft, or to add another offensive lineman, or a defensive superstar, or something that's going to turn your team around, and eventually get the pieces to go around Trey Lance or whoever you decide to add at quarterback in the draft.
For sure. Again, I'm assuming here you're going to hear later in the episode that we do expect Trey Lance to be the 4th of the signal callers taken. And at 7th overall, I mean, if you're able to secure one of those top 4 guys we've mentioned multiple times on this channel,
it's a big drop off after those top 4 guys.
Huge.
And after the 5th guy, it's even bigger.
Yeah. So, I mean, at the end of the day here, if you're the Lions, you know you're not in a contention area. You have the 7th overall pick. You have a potential franchise young stud in Trey Lance available to you. You got to move on from Stafford. So I have currently here, Detroit trades Matthew Stafford to the Washington football team in exchange for pick 51. They draft Trey Lance 7th overall, and they end up signing Andy Dalton to a bridge deal, 1-year deal to give Trey Lance experience and potentially learning time behind him. That contract value is probably going to range in the $5 to $10 million area, if I were to guess. Again, similar to what Andy Dalton got this year with the Cowboys, maybe a little bit higher, considering he proved he can be a bridge type quarterback to get you through a year. So I think that's their ultimate best option. Again, as good as Stafford is, as good as this offense was when everything was healthy, you got to know in the NFL when it's your time that things have to unravel. And this is the
tear down and build it up. That's and honestly, even if they wanted to, they could keep Stafford for another year and draft a guy and let Stafford be the bridge quarterback. But I think you can actually get some value for Stafford.
The problem with that is, again, if he gets hurt this year or anything like that, the value drops from, say, 51st overall to maybe a late 3, possibly if he has a bad year or gets hurt. And the dead cap goes from $19 million to $33 million next year if they don't move on from him this offseason. So
really, it actually goes up.
$14 million. This is his potential out 2021. So if you're the Lions here, this is your window. Get that value for Stafford, move on, because you have the draft capital to be able to do so.
Yep. Yeah, I think that makes sense for them, and it's going to make sense for the next team that we're going to talk about. Nice transition there. Yeah. The NFC East, quickly before we get into the team that we're going to talk about, we deemed the only team that is not in the quarterback market, really, this year as the New York Giants, because the New York Giants are probably going to let Daniel Jones play out the season unimpeded with no competition, any of that kind of stuff, because they need to see what they got in their 6th overall pick. So all the other 3 teams in this division we will be talking about, some longer than others. Yeah. But we'll start with the Washington football team.
I mean, this is what you look for if you're a team. You have all the young pieces and talent on the team already in place. You just need that final piece. And that final piece for the Washington football team is the quarterback spot. Again, this is a glorious financial situation, and say the team. They are a playoff team. I know it's not saying much because it was the NFC least this past year, but you made the playoffs with a broken Alex Smith, Kyle Allen, and Dwayne Haskins, who's currently not even on the team, as your quarterback rotation this year, which is remarkable. Again, this is a team, ton of draft cap space available. They only really have 2 main free agents, and that's going to be guard Brandon Sheriff and edge rusher Ryan Kerrigan. The play here is simple for me. You bring back Brandon Sheriff. His expected market value should be roughly between 10 and 12 million annually. And you let Ryan Kerrigan hit the market. Reason why you let Ryan Kerrigan hit the market? First of all, he's old. Second of all, you just drafted his 2 young successors in these past 2 NFL drafts in Montez Sweat and Chase Young,
who could both play very well.
Yeah, they are arguably the most exciting young edge rush duo in the league, which tells you a lot. Again, Montez Sweat coming off a 9.5 sack season in his second year, and Chase Young making the Pro Bowl as a rookie. Like,
he's the strongest strength. He's going to win Defensive Rookie of the Year too.
No doubt about it. So if you're looking at that, a move here that makes a ton of sense for them is cutting ties with Alex Smith. This is a must this offseason. If they cut ties with Alex Smith, yes, you absorb $10.8 million in dead cap, but you also free up nearly $13.6 million because guess what? Alex Smith, if he's not cut, is making $24.4 million in 2021. So play here. You free up that $13.6 million. You re-sign Brandon Sheriff. And guess what? As I mentioned with the Lions, you trade that 51st overall pick for a guy in Matt Stafford. I mean, it's a no-brainer. You're a quarterback away. Matt Stafford has proven in the past when he is fully healthy and capable going into his season, he's a top 12, top 10 type quarterback. And that getting that for this team is going to make them a double-digit win team for the future. So again, 51st overall pick for Matt Stafford. You still have the 19th overall pick to your arsenal. You can add a receiver or a tackle. You can add maybe a Rashad Bateman, Rashawn Slater, Christian Darrisaw type in the first round. And if you're able to pair one of those prospects and still get your signal caller with your 51st overall pick and one that's fantastic in Matt Stafford,
you can even add more pieces in free agency. Sign a receiver like a Curtis Samuel even to go with Terry McLaurin, draft Rashad Bateman. Now you got a formidable core. You still have Antonio Gibson, J.D. McKissick in the backfield. It could be a fun offense if they do it right. What they shouldn't do, which could happen because of the connections, is sign Cam Newton. They should not sign Cam Newton and think that their quarterback problem is fixed. If you want to sign Cam Newton as your backup, that's fine. But if you want him to be your starter, not smart.
One way I signed Cam Newton, again, I pictured here that they make the move for Matt Stafford. If they were able to trade up and get like a Trey Lance, I wouldn't be opposed to having Cam for a year as the bridge. That's the only way.
Quarterback needy teams in front of them that are going to covet Trey Lance. I don't think any of these 4 guys get out of the top, 12 picks, 10 picks, even
top 8, to be quite honest.
Yeah, like these QBs can all play. All 4 of them can play. So, and there's a big drop off, as we mentioned, and a bigger drop off after the 5th guy. So I don't think any team that is really outside the top 15 is getting a franchise signal caller in this draft unless they're willing to sell the farm to get one.
Heck, we're going to be talking about the 49ers later on, and you're going to see what predicament they are left with. Sorry about that. Apparently, I can't pronounce English.
Yeah, pretty much. So, Washington football team, we have the verdict for you there, as we mentioned.
Yep.
The next team, the next team that we got to talk about. This is I'm going to try and make this as short as possible because this is a conversation that we can legitimately talk about for 40 minutes.
Yeah.
Just this team, but the Philadelphia Eagles. Oof is the first point I wrote. Oof. Like they are in a bad situation, not only from a quarterback perspective, not only from a coaching search perspective right now that's currently taking place, but
please don't get Kellen Moore.
They're in a rough situation all around. Their capologist needs to be fired ASAP because their contracts are horrible. If you guys want a frame of reference, my team, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they've been a bad organization for a long time, but the one thing they have not been bad at is structuring contracts. And if you go to Spot Track, totally free to do. You go to Spot Track and look at how their contracts are structured, their dead cap hits and all that kind of stuff, and compare them to Philadelphia's. It's probably the best capologist in the league to the worst capologist in the league. I'll put it on the screen right now, but Carson Wentz has a $59 million dead cap hit this year. So any Eagles fans that want to cut Carson Wentz, guess what? Not happening. You're not absorbing a $59 million cap hit.
$59 million for your backup quarterback.
Fletcher Cox, who's an aging player, $21 million. Brandon Graham, who's an aging player, $17 million. Lane Johnson, who's had some injury issues, like $39 million dead cap. It's just ridiculous how bad their contracts are structured. It's all backloaded, completely the wrong way to do it. Front loaded is always the way to go if you're aspiring capologist out there, which probably no one is, but
hey, you're an accountant. Go apply.
Yeah, literally. Their contracts are structured so poorly. They have declining players on huge contracts with huge cap hits. So when they decline, they can't move on. Basically, is how the Eagles' logic is working. I'm sure everyone wants to say, oh, just trade Carson Wentz for a second-round pick to the Indianapolis Colts and run it with Jalen Hurts. One, Indianapolis would never do that. Two, they can't just trade Carson Wentz. As I mentioned, no quarterback in the NFL from a financial and a draft capital perspective has more invested in them than Carson Wentz. If you think about his cap hit, for one, which we just talked about, and two, they traded, 2 first-round picks to go get him and a second-rounder back in 2016. They have a lot invested in this dude. So, and if you look, and the reason I say this with such confidence is because look at what transpired the past couple of weeks. Doug Peterson was fired. Why was he fired? Because his goals were quote unquote not aligned with ownership. And what that tells me is ownership basically sat him down. We're like, hey, it's you or Wentz. We want Wentz. Basically, we want to keep him because he's our franchise, because we spent this draft capital on him and he sells tickets for us and all this stuff. So we want to keep Wentz, and you clearly don't want Wentz still, which is smart of Doug Peterson. And they're like, all right, sayonara. We'll find a coach that likes Wentz. And that's bad to limit yourself in a coaching search to make sure that your coach likes your current bad quarterback. So
he's what? The fourth highest paid quarterback in the NFL right now?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah. And if you let go of him, guess what? The cap hit is $25 million more than that number. Yeah, $25 million more than the fourth highest paid quarterback in the league.
It literally serves you more purpose to deactivate him on game day, keep him on the roster, and deactivate him on game day and avoid some of his roster bonuses and stuff than it is to actually trade or cut him.
What a mess.
Just a brutal situation. This franchise has so much invested, as I mentioned. To be honest, I honestly think this goes up in flames. However they decide to handle this, I think this is wrong, what they do. I think they're going to choose Wentz. They're going to try and find a coach that will work with Wentz. It'll end up being a lesser coach than they could have gotten if they didn't limit their coaching search by that metric. Unless they somehow restructure his contract and get him out of there that way, maybe some team is stupid enough to trade for him and trade for that contract. When ownership is forcing a quarterback on a new coach, it's never going to end well. And basically, what does all this mean for fantasy? Again, we can talk about this and rip on the organization. It's very well documented that neither of us like the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm a Tampa Bay Bucks fan. I grew up watching the Eagles just romp us until we shut down their stadium with Rondé Barber. Shout out him. And you're a Dallas Cowboys fan who just naturally hates the Philadelphia.
I fucking hate the Eagles, man.
Exactly. So we are clearly biased in this. But what we're saying is factual. They're in a bad situation. And what this means for fantasy to me is avoid Eagles players in Dynasty. I would sell high if you have Miles Sanders. Miles Sanders is the number one guy I'm avoiding in Dynasty. And the reason is this quarterback turmoil that I talked about with David Montgomery. Jalen Reagor, same thing. If anyone tells you he's a buy low candidate, no one is going to be affected more by the quarterback than a wide receiver, especially a receiver with a lot invested in him. And I just can't get on board with investing in this Eagles situation.
Bro, what about top 7 Dynasty quarterback Jalen Hurts?
Yeah, and Jalen Hurts is a weird study as well because Jalen Hurts looks good, right? He looked good in his games.
Fine. Yeah.
He looked fine. He had a couple he had a down game or two, had a good game or two. But you can't do anything with him. He's a second-round pick. You got to keep him on the roster, right? So you can't just get rid of him because Carson Wentz is too fragile to handle competition. And
I fully agree with that. But if you're a Jalen Hurts, like how are people putting him in the top 7 Dynasty quarterbacks given the state of the Eagles franchise? It doesn't make any sense.
Jalen Hurts is another guy that I'm not willing to buy in Dynasty, and I'm willing to sell, in fact.
Sell him. Sell him. Like I would take any of the top 4 quarterbacks in this year's draft over him, like without an instant. I would add significant pieces to do that.
If any Eagles fan or Jalen Hurts owner in Dynasty has a problem with what we're saying right now, I challenge you to come back to this video 2 months from now and tell me how wrong we were. And if we were wrong, I'll admit it. But I have a feeling this is not going to end well for Jalen Hurts, for Carson Wentz, for Miles Sanders, for everyone's fantasy value. And unless they handle this swiftly, and by swiftly, this is what I would do. If you can somehow restructure Carson Wentz's contract that makes him tradable, I'm getting him off my team. That is what I'm doing. If I can somehow do it, maybe I eat $25 million this year. But again, that's literally half of what his actual dead cap hit is right now. So I don't know how you do it. Your capologist clearly sucks at his job. I don't think he's going to be able to do it this year. So again, Carson Wentz, Eagles situation, just bad. What our verdict is, what we actually think is going to happen is you do nothing because you can't. You can't physically do anything at the quarterback position. You let these two stay on the roster and fight it out in camp. Hurts versus Wentz, may the best man win. That is basically what they have to do because it's their only choice.
Yep. No, I fully agree.
Unless you're Jalen Hurts. That's your other choice, which I wouldn't do.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. Next on the list is going to be...
we'll rip through some of these faster than others, as you can see, because that one was a really complicated and long discussion. So this one is quick, and it's quick for a reason.
Dallas Cowboys. Okay. All right. I don't know why this didn't happen in 2018 when I was screaming from the fences to get it done, because that was when Dak was worth $32 million a year. But guess what? Even at 40, 41 about is probably where I'm going to have him around in this video. I don't give a fuck. You sign him. You sign your top 5 quarterback to the long-term deal he's deserved. Okay? Again, I'm not going to go too far into this because this can be, again, another 40-minute video of me absolutely just ranting on my fucking team. But you know what? Deshaun got 4 for 156. Dak's gonna probably say, oh, I want a couple million more because I'm next in line. So be it. I got here 4 years, $158 million. You signed Dak, which is roughly a $39.5 million per year annual salary. That's a bargain.
And
that's a bargain,
like the Eagles did.
Yeah, I mean, Dak is not going to turn into Carson Wentz because guess what? Dak Prescott is not a little bitch like fucking Carson Wentz and can handle criticism. Because guess what? He's had that chip on his shoulder since he was a 4th-round pick. Since Cowboys fucking fans want to think he's garbage for some reason, even though they're fucking idiots. Got people here.
Turn down the rabbit hole.
Sorry.
Verdict is that they re-signed Dak.
They re-signed Dak.
If you like walk in free agency because you like one of the draft prospects better, or because you want to sign, I don't know, whoever in free agency or trade for anyone, like just re-sign Dak Prescott. It's not hard. Anyway,
I'm just gonna say one more thing.
Go ahead.
Guess what? If you're a franchise that only makes a down, if you're downgrading the quarterback position intentionally because you want to save some money, you don't deserve to be a fucking franchise. I'll tell you that right now.
That is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Dumbest idea I've ever heard. There's a reason that the New York Jets haven't had a quarterback worth of shit since Joe Namath. It's because they can't find them because they're hard to find. So if you have one, keep him. You don't let him out of the building. Again, this applies to Houston Texans fans too, and the Houston Texans ownership. Why would you ever let your franchise quarterback out of the building? Hold on to him. Anyway, next division.
Go for it.
Yeah. The only team we deemed not having a quarterback question mark in this division is my team, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And long term, I guess you could say they have a quarterback question mark. But, I mean, Tom Brady's playing next year, probably the year after that. Who the hell knows at this point with Tom Brady? So I would say from the immediate futures perspective, just don't worry about Tampa Bay's QB situation. Don't invest in Josh Rosen because he was like their backup in camp or anything like that. They're not going to draft a guy in the 2nd round. If anyone mocks them, they're wrong because they're a win now team. Whether they win this year, if they win the Super Bowl this year, which could happen, they're in the NFC Championship game. They're still going to be in win now mode, and they're still not going to draft a quarterback next year.
Dude, you can have Kyle Trask.
Yeah, like that's not happening. So just get that out of your mind if you think there's going to be some backup contingency plan to Tom Brady, because there isn't going to be one. I can tell you right now there isn't going to be one until he's actually gone. So the New Orleans Saints is the first team that we have on this list. And again, not in a good situation. They're probably even more fucked from a financial perspective than Philadelphia even is. And the reason is because, for those of you that don't know, the salary cap is going down this year. And the reason it's going down is because of COVID and because of the fact that there was limited ticket sales or no ticket sales for some teams and limited merchandise and all that other kind of stuff. They made less money is the point. So the salary cap is going down. And the Saints currently with a projected salary cap of, I believe, about $175 million, which is about $10 million less than it was last year. They're currently negative $99 million in cap space right now. And I'm not joking. You can go look this up with multiple sources. It ranges from like 95 to 99 million. And not a lot of flexibility too, I might add, to make moves to free up more space. So if you'll see on the screen right now, there's a number of their biggest cap hits. And you can see when you compare their cap hit with their dead cap, there's not a lot of difference, which means they can't just cut a bunch of players and free up a bunch of cap space. The only guy that is actually like a complete free up kind of move is Quan Alexander, who barely played for them and only frees up 13 million. So congrats, you have 85 million over the cap.
My question, how the fuck did their accountant let them get into this spot financially? How?
I know why.
How?
And it's the same reason Philadelphia is in the same situation. If you guys want to look at New
Backloaded
England.
contract.
New England this year, basically, there was an interview with Bill Belichick earlier in the season being like, oh, how come you only signed Cam to this amount of money or whatever? And Bill Belichick is very candid, and it's really rare for him to be like this, but honestly, he goes, because we had no money. The reason is because we had no money. We sold out with Tom Brady's age to win Super Bowls. We made like 3 of them and won 2 of them or whatever in the past 5 years. So there's what we did was sell out to win a Super Bowl, which is what people, analysts, and talking heads tell us to do. And then when we do it, they say we're dog crap the next year. So Bill Belichick did it the right way. They sold out to win Super Bowls and they won them. So I think what the New Orleans Saints did is what the Patriots did, except they actually won Super Bowls in New England. So shout out to my Tampa Bay Buccaneers for taking out the Saints because I hate the Saints. But
the Saints won what, 2 total playoff games in the last 5 years?
Yeah, which is ridiculous.
Being $100 million over.
But again, you went for broke and you went broke, literally. So what do I do if I'm New Orleans? I honestly have no idea, because what I think is what they're somehow going to do is they're going to somehow find a way to get under the cap, and that guarantees them they're not able to sign Marcus Williams, who is a free agent this year, who is one of the best free agents, free safeties in the league, and Sheldon Rankins, who is an above average D tackle. Yes, I know you want him on the Cowboys.
I'll take either of those guys.
Yeah, I know you want them on the Cowboys. Jameis Winston, who is currently their backup quarterback and threw the longest pass in playoff history, apparently, for the Saints a week ago. He's also a free agent, and he's a potential QB of the future that you're probably not going to be able to retain. The only way he comes back is if he takes vet minimum. That's literally all it comes down to. The only way Jameis is back with that team is if he takes vet minimum, which is possible considering he took a small contract to be with them this year. But again, their quarterback situation is really, really odd because it all is financially based. Their current draft pick that they hold indicates that they're in a good range for a quarterback like Mac Jones. But again, is Mac Jones worth a top 25, 28 pick? I'm not really sure he is, to be honest. I don't think there's a whole lot of upside with Mac Jones. They seem content, personally, with the 2 options that they have, which is Jameis Winston and Taysom Hill. I think the only way they pick a rookie in the draft is if that rookie slides beyond a point that they can't stomach passing on them, which to me would be like if Mac Jones was there in the mid-second round or the late second round pick or potentially their third round pick. So I don't think they're going in the draft. I don't think they're going to trade for anyone. I think their current quarterback next year is on the roster right now, whether it's Jameis Winston or Taysom Hill. Taysom Hill is the only one under contract currently. And if Jameis comes back, as I mentioned, he's going to have to re-sign for like vet minimum because they have no money.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. Again,
and they're probably going to have to cut some other guys too.
I could potentially see them taking a rookie, but again, as you mentioned, they're in a win now type mode. I understand that Drew Brees is retiring, but as we saw, they were 3-1 with Taysom Hill. I know he's not a good starting quarterback. We all can pretty much watch the games and see that, but all the team needs for him is not to turn the ball over, because guess what? They would have won that game against the Bucs if Drew Brees wasn't so atrocious in turning the ball over.
And they can take a Baltimore Ravens type approach if they have Taysom Hill as their starting quarterback, because they have Latavius Murray and Alvin Kamara who can run the ball and carry the offense
also,
for the most part, and check down King who can catch his slants and get first downs. So
Latavius might have to be a cap casualty.
Be good with that team.
Latavius might have to be a cap casualty as well.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, like honestly, they're in such a bad situation right now. Like outside of like illegally like transferring funds over, I have no idea how they're going to keep the players in the core that they currently have.
I just don't understand how they got here. Like whatever.
They backloaded contracts. That's basically how they did it.
We can move on to the other 2 NFC South teams, and the ones that
are in much better situations.
I like the futures of them now. Right now, the Atlanta Falcons, in terms of their cap numbers, are not in a good spot. Because guess what? They made that Super Bowl in 2016. They did the kind of same thing. They re-signed their quarterback to a huge backloaded deal. They re-signed a lot of their key contributors, Julio Jones as well, to a backloaded deal. Now, what does that mean? They are currently $32 million over the cap at this current juncture. However, they have a few potentially simple moves that they can get to free up some cap. Now, they're not going to be under by making these moves, but they're moves that have to be made regardless, okay? So cutting the likes of Ricardo Allen, Ito Smith, Tyler Davison, Alan Bailey, and James Carpenter frees them close to $17 million. Falcons' best plan here, in my opinion, would be letting Matt Ryan play out the following season and either cutting or trading him, depending on what his value would be. Because let's say he has a terrible injury-related year, like Carson Wentz type level bad, you're not going to get anything for him. However, you know what? he plays decent top 15 to 20 quarterback type numbers, you could probably get a late 3, early 4 type value for him. And if that's the case, his dead cap this year or next year compared to the year after, well, that number drops from $49.937 million to $26.525 because, again, he's got that out. So what that basically means is, again, you get $23 million of extra financial flexibility. And with a new head coach in Arthur Smith signing there this offseason, I think this is the time for the Atlanta Falcons to move on to their next young signal caller to take over this team. They pick fourth overall. And with the scheme that they are currently running in Atlanta, again, Arthur Smith's team of heavy play action, heavy bootleg type action with their quarterback, they need a young guy that can get out of the pocket, make plays out of the pocket, make plays off platform, and a guy that is from the state that makes a ton of sense for them at fourth overall. It just so happens to be Justin Fields from the Ohio State Buckeyes. I mean, I think that's a match made in heaven.
I think all 4 of the top quarterbacks in this class fit that system, though. Just to be fair, Lawrence isn't going to be there. Wilson might not be there. Who knows what the Jets do or if someone trades ahead of the Falcons. But and even Lance, I think all 4 of these guys actually fit that scheme because all 4 of these QBs are big and mobile and have arms and all that kind of stuff. They're all kind of the same, cut from the same cloth. So all 4 of these QBs would fit in Atlanta. And I think all 4 are good fits. Just for the record, if this prediction isn't correct, it's not like, oh, Justin Fields didn't go there, so he's not fantasy relevant. No, if Zach Wilson goes there or Trey Lance goes there, then I still think it's a fantastic fit.
The reason why I think Fields would be perfect, again, he's got flaws to his game. I'm not going to pretend like he's the perfect prospect. He's not Trevor Lawrence, as much as some people in the fantasy industry want to say he's actually has higher value than Trevor Lawrence. I don't know where they get that. But the thing that you get with Justin Fields is he's athletic, he's big, he can run, and he's got a good arm. Now, what you want to do with that, as I mentioned, they have a current viable starting quarterback option in place for the 2021 season. You let Matt Ryan play it out. You got that potential out where you save $23 million in cap next year.
You might even be able to get that down too if you wanted to restructure and be like, hey, Matt, listen, we drafted this kid. This year is your audition for a new team if you want to continue playing, but we would like to restructure your contract so that we have a club option or whatever next year so that you can be cut or be traded or whatever. Matt Ryan will probably agree to that, to be honest, because he probably sees the state of the franchise, probably sees the writing on the wall, that kind of stuff. So, I 100% agree with this move. I think it's probably inevitable whether they want to admit it or not. Maybe they don't do it this year. I think they're just delaying the rebuilding process, to be honest, if they don't.
The problem if they don't,
it's better to admit when you're wrong or when it's time, like a little earlier than is too late.
The problem if they don't do it this year, okay? You got 4 young franchise potential quarterbacks in this upcoming class. I don't think next year's class is even remotely as good as this year's. Not to mention, who's even going to say you're going to have that top 5 pick next year with your offense and your defense potentially being healthy? You started off bad this year.
You just win too many games and you have the 12th pick in the draft and you're kind of screwed.
100%. So in that situation, you're picking 4th overall. You have a young potential franchise signal caller waiting on the board for you with a new head coach. You take him, let him groom behind Matt Ryan for a year. And think of this. Going into the 2022 season, you got Justin Fields going into his second year on an offense that features 2 of the top receivers in the game, a young offensive line that's been improving, and potentially a new running back mate that potentially might get selected in this year's class, to be honest. We'll talk about that in the running back landing spot videos. But you got a young, promising offense that you could just insert Justin Fields into after this year. So, again, I know you and Lucas mentioned this a lot, but a lot of times you want to build the team and then insert the quarterback in. The Falcons are in a perfect position to be able to do so this year.
Yeah, and there's their nest, if you want to call it that. That's what I called it on the last episode. Is pretty solid. Like they have invested in the offensive line. It's not necessarily the greatest offensive line in the world, but they have invested with Chris Lindstrom and Caleb McGarry, and they have Austin Matthews. Austin Matthews on a big contract, and Alex Mack's aging, but he's still pretty solid. So you have a solid offensive line. You have Calvin Ridley and Julio Jones, as you mentioned. Julio's getting older. We don't really know what his future is, but I would say you definitely keep him for this year. If you're going to draft a young quarterback, you might see the field. All that kind of stuff contributes to the fact that they're definitely going to add a running back at some point, free agency, draft, whatever. That should help build an offense around Justin Fields should he have to play this year or this coming season. and going forward. So yeah, I definitely like that move. I think it's the right move. It needs to happen. And I think if they don't do it, they're probably just delaying the process, as I mentioned.
Hey, and you would love if they don't do it, to be honest, because
I'm a fan of a team in the division. I'm really not that scared of Atlanta though, because
feels like could be dangerous.
Before too, Atlanta's that team for me that I don't dislike really that much.
They're like the football team for me.
Yeah, like I'm neutral against them. I hate the Saints and I don't like the Panthers because of some of the players that they've had in the past, like Steve Smith and Cam Newton and stuff.
Norman.
Yeah, Josh Norman stuff. Yeah. So speaking of the Panthers, they're the next team that we're going to be talking about, and they're in a very good spot, to be honest. I think they're in a position where they don't really have to rush anything. They can let whatever decision they want to make come to them because they have Teddy Bridgewater, right? They have him under contract for this year. He's $23 million, I believe, in his base salary, and he has a $20 million cap hit. So you can't cut Teddy Bridgewater this year. I suppose you could extend him if you really believe in him. But basically, for this year, Teddy Bridgewater is set to be either a starter for you or a bridge quarterback for a rookie. Literally, pun intended. Only $7 million in cap space total on the roster, but you have plenty of measures across the entire roster where you could cut guys here and there to free up $6 million, 7, 4, 5, 6 here and there. And the only notable free agents that you actually have on your roster are Curtis Samuel and Taylor Moton. Moton probably being the only one that you're actually probably going to re-sign. I think Curtis Samuel probably walks in free agency. And Moton's your starting right tackle, so you probably definitely want to get him back. But the fact that Teddy is in place is a big deal because it's the second year in the system for Joe Brady, who hopefully will still be there. He might get the Philadelphia Eagles job. Who knows if he wants to attach that ticking time bomb. But it makes it unlikely that they're going to sign anyone. So we can rule that option off the table, that they're not going to sign another quarterback when they have Teddy under contract, unless it's Dak Prescott, because really there's no other upgrade of quarterbacks that's better than Teddy Bridgewater on the market right now. And I actually think it is very unlikely they trade for a quarterback too, just because, again, like you could get a Carson Wentz, I suppose, or you could get a Matt Stafford, I suppose, or maybe you take a run at Deshaun Watson, but I don't think your team is in a state right now where you want to add a player like that. So that leaves the draft as the best route, in my opinion, for them to go with their draft picks, given they have a top 10 pick at pick number 8, and they have a high second round pick and a high third round pick as well. It may take moving up for whichever of these guys you covet the most. Maybe you like Trey Lance the most. Maybe you like Justin Fields the most. Maybe you like Zach Wilson the most, which is my biggest fear as a Buccaneers fan. The QB landing spot is one that is going to be very fruitful. So whatever quarterback lands here, because I do think they are going to draft a quarterback, whatever quarterback lands here is probably going to be my QB2. The only way that doesn't happen is if the Niners take a quarterback, basically, because I think this is the best landing spot of the quarterback needy teams not named San Francisco. So just real quick, I just want to go over the landing spot. They have a great coaching staff. We've seen them elevate the play of a bad roster and elevate the play of like an average quarterback to make a mediocre type of team out of bad grapes, basically. And they have 2 great wide receivers. They have Christian McCaffrey. They have offensive line with some pieces on it. Whichever of these prospects land here will be my QB2 for dynasty purposes from this draft class behind Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah. Hey, what if Mac Jones lands there? No,
not Mac Jones. Whichever of these 4 quarterbacks, if they draft a quarterback, land here.
Yeah, I'm playing. You would love that as a Bucs fan, though, by the way.
Yeah, Mac Jones is the quarterback. I mean, he actually does fit the system pretty well, Joe Brady's system. But that's not a smart move.
Just mention in this scenario again. You want to detail to the viewers what trade we're hypothetically pointing here.
So I kind of teased the fact that they might have to go up and get whatever quarterback they want. And again, my worst fear as a Buccaneers fan is that this team lands Zach Wilson, and I think that's who they're going to want. And the reason it's my biggest fear is because I think Zach Wilson's a great prospect, and I think it would be an absolutely tremendous fit for him in this offense. He's a lot like Joe Burrow. That's why. He's honestly like he's a lot like Joe Burrow.
He's got a stronger arm.
He's got a stronger arm than Joe Burrow. Yeah, exactly. Better deep accuracy than Joe Burrow.
And faster.
Something. I think you trade your 8th overall pick if you're the Carolina Panthers. You trade your 40th pick, which is your second rounder, and you trade probably next year's second rounder, next year's third rounder for the 3rd overall pick from Miami, and you select BYU quarterback Zach Wilson. It's a win-win for both teams except for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It's the only team that loses.
Yeah, 2 NFC South foes end up snagging their quarterbacks in our hypothetical preview. This
a new day in the NFC South, except for Tom Brady.
For sure. And the final team of the video is going to be one that is coming off a Super Bowl appearance 2
Real
years
quick,
ago.
let's just go over the teams in the NFC West, the teams that we're not going to be talking about because they have a QB in place, or it looks that way for one of these teams. The Cardinals have Kyler Murray. The Seahawks have Russell Wilson. We actually heard some rumblings. I don't know if you saw this earlier today, that Jared Goff and Sean McVay's need marriage counseling. Did you see that report on Roto World? There was a Roto World clickbait saying that those two guys are not seeing eye to eye. So that's a storyline to follow, because there's not a good chance, but there's an outside shot that Jared Goff is actually a quarterback that gets moved in the offseason or something like that. I haven't looked at the financials. Just worth noting that there was a report today saying that they have a somewhat rocky relationship right now. But
that's interesting. But the one that officially needs a quarterback as of today is going to be the San Francisco 49ers. Now, you guys mentioned it in the AFC preview, but the 49ers are in such a simple predicament when it comes to quarterback Jimmy Garoppolo. His dead cap this year is a mere $2.8 million. For reference, if they were to cut him, release him, see you later, pal, that frees up nearly $23.5 million of cap space.
Imagine structuring a contract so it's front loaded so this can happen. Because if they were the Philadelphia Eagles, he'd have a $40 million cap hit because they backloaded his contract.
No. I think the play here is, again, you mentioned you see Jimmy Garoppolo going to the Patriots in the AFC preview. Offering him to a franchise like New England for their, let's just say, third round, 96th overall pick, I think makes a ton of sense for both sides. So you pick up that third round compensatory compensation for him. And now, if you're the Niners, you can bring in a bridge quarterback like, say, Mitch Trubisky, a guy that once upon a time they actually had a chance to draft back in 2017, but traded the pick to the Bears.
They probably did a lot of work on him too that year.
Yeah, and for that deal, 2 years, $20 million probably makes sense for both sides. If that's the case, again, you get a young athletic option to fit Kyle Shanahan's offense, do a lot of stuff outside the numbers. I do a lot of stuff outside the pocket is what I'm saying.
You can't do anything outside the numbers.
That's not what you know what I mean. Anyways, you can do a lot more outside the pocket is what I'm saying than what Jimmy Garoppolo was giving you. I think that would be a fun fit. And yes, if you're a Niners fan, you want them to move up for one of those top four quarterbacks. You want them to move up for Deshaun Watson. It's just
everyone wants Zach Wilson on this team. Everyone does. I want him on this team because then he's not on the Carolina Panthers. I want him on this team because I think, and he's absolutely my QB. He might even be my QB1. Honestly, I would battle back. No, honest to God, I'm not even kidding. If Zach Wilson is a San Francisco 49er, it will be very, very hard for me not to pick him over Trevor Lawrence. I think I would hate myself forever if I didn't do it. And that's how much I believe that quarterback landing spots matter, is that I would actually be willing to take Zach Wilson over Trevor Lawrence if that were to happen. I don't think it's going to, but if this were to happen, the ideal situation, if you're a San Francisco 49ers fan, or if you have Brandon Ayuk in Dynasty, or if you have Deebo Samuel in Dynasty, or if you have George Kittle in Dynasty, is that they go up and they get Zach Wilson, Justin Fields, or Trey Lance, or one of them falls to them naturally. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think all four of those guys are going to be gone in the top 10 picks, and they're going to have to move up to get one. It's possible they could trade this year's first, next year's first, trade up to
year after's first.
Yeah, they could trade up to 5 with Cincinnati and get Justin Fields or Zach Wilson or Trey Lance. If that doesn't happen, this is our alternative plan. You can.
However, the problem for them is that if Miami's facing an offer from them to go down to 12, you best believe Detroit's going to hear that from Miami is going to be willing to make an offer from 7. And if you're Miami or Cincinnati or whatever, let's just say third or fifth, whatever pick, third or fifth pick, because they don't need their quarterbacks. Which offer would you rather take? You just look at
rather move down to 7 than you would for 12, unless the compensation is vastly different and you get 3 ones out of them or something.
Yeah, for sure. So ultimately here, I think that the scenario that does play out for the 49ers is, again, they signed Trubisky to be their starter for the next 2 years. Again, we'll put the number at around $20 million. And if Mac Jones is available at 44, you get your young quarterback, I guess. I mean,
yeah, or you forego quarterback entirely and you go draft a quarterback next year. The San Francisco 49ers with Mitch Trubisky, honestly can say this, would not be a worse team than they were with Jimmy Garoppolo. Honestly. I agree. Their defense is healthy. Nick Bosa comes back, all that kind of stuff. Mitch Trubisky is capable of carrying that team to 11 wins with that defense and with the offense.
I'd say 9.
I think they can, with the offensive playmakers Mitch Trubisky would have around him, with Brandon Ayuk, with a healthy Deebo Samuel, with a healthy George Kittle, potentially add a running back as well. That team could be absolutely dangerous, and all they have to do
the
is have
division
Mitch just work inside structure.
Like 11 wins probably in the NFC East, 9 wins probably in the NFC West.
That's a good point, yeah. But either way, obviously, this is not the situation you want if you own those players in Dynasty. If it were me, if I were John Lynch, and I wish I was John Lynch because he's a great Tampa Bay Buccaneer, great, I'd go up and get a quarterback. I'd go up in the draft and do it. That's
whatever it costs.
Huh?
Whatever it costs, to be honest. I mean, you got a Super Bowl caliber team.
Zach Wilson, whatever it costs. But, I mean, there's a good chance Zach Wilson's picked at 2. So who the hell knows what that would cost? That would cost you 3 ones, I think, to get up to 2.
100% minimum.
Yeah, so if you believe in a quarterback, if you believe in Trey Lance, if you believe in Justin Fields, if you believe in Zach Wilson, one of them sliding in the draft process, we saw this with Josh Allen a few years ago. The Bills could have went up with Indianapolis at 3 when the Jets did and traded up and tried to get ahead of all the other quarterback needy teams to get their quarterback, but they didn't. They stayed patient. They traded with Cincinnati instead to get to 12. And then on draft night, they traded with Tampa Bay to get to 7, and they got the guy they wanted the whole time. So there's a chance that happens. San Francisco, maybe they love Trey Lance. Who the hell knows? And they want Trey Lance, and Trey Lance starts to slip. They can trade up maybe to 10 or to 9 or 8 or something, get Trey Lance at that point during the draft process and get their quarterback then. San Francisco is the best landing spot for a quarterback. I'll repeat it again. For those who weren't listening, this is the time to grab your San Francisco players in Dynasty and buy them. This is when you want George Kittle. This is like, I don't think anyone's going to sell him, but this is when you want Brandon Ayuk, especially because he's the young guy and some people maybe don't believe in him. This is when you want Deebo Samuel, who's coming off of an offseason. They're going to get a quarterback upgrade, so invest in these players.
100%. So to recap the video, if you guys made it this far, we had, start off, the Chicago Bears pairing Jacoby Brissett and taking their young signal caller going into 2022 or 2022. Yeah,
another year, not this year.
Yeah. The Lions end up trading Matthew Stafford to the Washington Football Team for pick 51. They draft Trey Lance at 7, and they end up signing a bridge quarterback like an Andy Dalton for a 1-year, $5 to $10 million APY deal. And then going into the NFC East, Washington figures out their quarterback spot, gets the veteran Matthew Stafford from Detroit in exchange for that 51st overall selection, and frees up the ability to take a receiver or tackle that 19th spot. Makes a ton of sense. So you can go through the next couple as well.
Yeah. The Eagles are completely screwed, and they basically are stuck with the 2 quarterbacks they have. Let them fight it out in camp. May the best man win. The Dallas Cowboys will re-sign Dak because they're not stupid. The New Orleans Saints will kind of screw themselves in the cap, also like the Philadelphia Eagles. And what I'm basically predicting for them to happen is that Jameis walks, Breeze retires, and Taysom Hill is your starting quarterback in 2021. Maybe add someone late in the draft to compete or be his backup. Atlanta Falcons, they're going to keep Matt Ryan for 1 more year, draft Justin Fields at 4th overall, and smooth transition in 2022. Carolina Panthers, they're going to trade up for Zach Wilson and select him at the 3rd overall pick. And then finally, the San Francisco 49ers are going to trade Jimmy G to the Pats for the 96th overall pick, sign Mitch Trubisky to a 2-year, $20 million deal as their bridge quarterback, starting quarterback, whatever you want to call him, and draft Mac Jones in the 2nd round of the 2021 NFL draft as a future option, or forego drafting Mac Jones and look at a quarterback in 2022 as well.
For sure. So with that being said, anything else you want to add, or can we head out of here?
As Danny mentioned, if you guys made it to this point in the video, comment down below. The Eagles are the worst franchise in the history of the NFL, and the Saints are a close second. If you guys enjoyed that, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you are new, hit the bell icon so you're notified anytime we post videos. As I mentioned, we're going to be running a lot of listener engagement stuff in our Discord. It is 100% free to join, which I didn't mention before. You don't have to pay for anything. You don't have to sign up for any email list or anything. Join the Discord. It's 100% free, and we're going to be doing rookie mock drafts, dynasty startup mocks, redraft mocks, all that kind of stuff. And we post a lot of information, and you can ask us questions directly in there. So make sure you're in there. That being said, peace out, guys, and enjoy your Wednesday.
Take it easy, y'all.
Why you need the